What's going on, everyone, and welcome to another Bros Talking Soccer podcast. My name is Dave Kindle. Today, I am joined by Stephen Brandt from the Yellow Card podcast. Stephen, hello, how you doing today?
Hey, Dave. Hopefully it's not as freezing out there in sunny San Diego, not San Diego, San Jose, as it is here in Buffalo, New York.
It is not at all. I will say it is not. It isn't sunny though. It hasn't been sunny in a while. The winter times, it doesn't. It's not sunny California that everybody pictures. But I'm not complaining because it's still in the 50s and 60s. So I don't want that to get misconstrued. But yeah, it's definitely warmer out here. So
Yeah,
if
exactly.
Yeah, so if you are joining us live on YouTube, hello, welcome. Please interact with us as we go along here. We're going to be talking for, half hour, 45 minutes, maybe an hour, who knows? It depends on, how this conversation goes. We're going to learn a little bit more about Stephen, his podcast, and some of his soccer fandom and whatnot. So, yeah, Stephen, any last questions?
Oh, this is going to be fun. I haven't drank in a couple weeks, and I've got two beers sitting next to me. This is either going to be, as I said in a text to you, it's either going to be the funniest interview you had, or you're just going to shake your head going, why the hell did I do this?
Either way, it'll be entertaining. And so I think it's going to be fun.
Yeah, let's go ahead and have fun with this.
All right, let's do it. All right, we're going to jump into it now. I'd like to welcome on Stephen Brandt from the Yellow Card podcast, which is an hour-long weekly soccer podcast. Stephen, welcome to Bros Talking Soccer. How you doing today?
Hey, Dave.
How you doing? You doing well?
I'm good, doing as well as you can for living in something freaking cold and it being the end of February. I mean, February is one of those short months that really nothing happens, if that makes sense. And I kind of like it in a way, but it's like I want a little bit more. So
Well, you're almost done with February, so there's at least that, and you kind of touched on it a little bit there. I know you're in a cold place, but can you tell people? I think you're in Buffalo now. Where are you originally from, and can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
oh boy, the origin story. God, I haven't had to do this in years. You can see I have not been on this side in a while. Um, to put it mildly, I've lived all over the place. I was born in Columbus, Ohio in the late 70s, so that goes to show how old I am at this point. My family lived in Rochester, New York for mm, let's say 8, 9 years. I'm not going to be too. Then my dad got to his pension at his job and decided that we needed a new break. So we moved to Minnesota. I went to high school in Minnesota, and that was in between the times that they had hockey teams. So I never really got into it there. And just as things are going, I moved back to New York in well, family moved back in 99. I came back in 03, and I moved to Buffalo in 05 to get a master's degree, and I haven't left.
Got it. Okay, so you've been there for quite some time there, trying to stay warm. And how'd you get into the sport of soccer and following it?
Um, the PC version of it is I watched it on TV in my orientation at the University of Kansas. The non-PC version of it is there is a video, and I don't think it exists anymore, of me getting tear gassed at the at Naples Stadium when I was I'd say about 16 at a soccer match, and immediately I said that being an American, going, all right, I am not going to see that at a Chicago Bears game. That was cool. So kind of developed into it, and it was never anything that was supposed to stick. I mean, I have said this many times, and this has gone on my Twitter a bunch of times. I'm the soccer podcaster that should never have happened. And what I put it this way is I always wanted to do media in some aspect or another, but it was college basketball. I went to the University of Kansas. Anybody who knows me well, I wear something Kansas related or am known as the Jayhawk my whole life. The problem is when you're 40, God, I know I'm a month away from that, but that's still getting odd to me.
Age is just a number,
And
man.
it's just a number until you actually see 40 and go, what the hell? Until you realize that I'm 6'3". I'm used to big people. I lived in the basketball players' dorm at Kansas. I've been around this. Then you realize, A, you can't play worth a damn, so you're not going to go to the NBA or play in college. So what do most people do? Like what we're doing. Media. Now, when I got out of it, media wasn't what it is now. So I looked at it, and when I got into doing this, it was 2005, and it didn't explode. Soccer wasn't what it is now. And I'm really envious of people that are younger than me, younger than you, that have lived this. So I thought, oh, I'll just get into this. It'll be this little sport that we won't like in Americans. And then that damn British underwear model came over the LA Galaxy, and it just now I have made a name for myself, but it was not what I expected it to be. So a lot of this is all right. I'll go get a soccer scarf, 150 of them later. Oh, I'll go read a soccer book, 1,000 of those later. Oh, I'll do a pod. I listen to 40 extra of them. It kind of got out of hand kind of got out of hand at a point.
Well, I like it. That's a really interesting story. And I obviously need to go back a step and ask you more about the Napoli thing. So what were you doing in Naples? Were you vacationing? Were you studying abroad? And what happened with the tear gas? Was that just a standard thing that happened at the time?
Well, I don't know. How much do you know of Serie A and the ultras over there?
So I know a fair amount. I know that they have a lot of power at the clubs. I know that they're a huge part of clubs and things like that. But anything you want to enlighten us on would
Oh,
be more than welcome.
well, to put it differently, and have you been over to Europe to watch games?
Yes. Not in
Okay, so
Italy, but I've watched in Germany and England.
having been to, and I know you've been to games here in the States. The soccer experience here in the States is completely different than it is overseas. We're coming close, but we're not going to hit that. They're 100 years ahead of us at this point. I went to a Catholic school in Minnesota, and in my infinite wisdom as an eighth grader, I decided that I don't need to know Spanish, that it's never going to help me, and that I don't need to know this as a 40-year-old. So I'm going to take Latin class. I still regret this to this day. I could speak no habla español, and that's about it. So we went over to I think it's my eighth or ninth grade year. I forgot which year it was, but it's after Maradona had left Napoli. We toured all over one summer in Italy, and I tell anybody, my dad's going over next year. I tell anybody, if you have the money, go to Italy. Some of the most amazing sights I have ever seen. The Vatican is amazing. The tombs in Rome are great. I mean, you're going to see stuff. You're going to eat food that you have never eaten before. I I was literally a lot younger and had a lot more hair at the time, and I still remember this. And I've traveled a lot since then. Um, the priest we went with decided in his infinite wisdom that he wanted to climb up Mount Vesuvius. Now, that's not smart for a bunch of spoiled Catholic school kids. We're not much of doing anything. So one of the girls we were with and a couple of the guys decided, let's just go walk around Naples. And Naples is interesting. I would go back in a heartbeat. So we went up to the stadium, and I just didn't realize it was Naples until about 2 or 3 years ago. That we're like, she's like, give me $1, I'll get us in. So she comes back with general admission tickets, and it's not something I'm used to because I went to NBA games in Minnesota. You get signed seats. So we're sitting in one of the corners, and there's people walking up behind us, and they're carrying 48 packs of beer with them. They're people you're
Coming ready to party.
I mean, they're loaded. And at that point, I didn't know. my parents were the type that wanted you to experience things before you went off to college, but I had never seen really many people drink more than one or two beers or a glass of wine. That's just not in my family. So I'm seeing this going, what the hell? Well, the home team, and it was not Napoli. It was some friendly or something. I don't remember exactly what it was just getting their brains beaten in. It was not pretty. And sure enough, the ultras that were there decided in their infinite wisdom they were going to take the stadium apart. And I'm not saying little things here and there. I was seeing the concrete and the dirt and the things that were holding the seats to come over my head. And I'm looking at this going, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen, and I'm also kind of fun. Well, the riot police come in, and I come to find out later that this is what they pretty much have riot police at games anyway. So I'm looking at this going, what the hell? Now, at this time, I'm a lot lighter than I am now, 250. I was about 220 at the time. So I see these police in riot gear coming on with tanks on each side of them, as big as those helium tanks you see at Party City and that type of stuff. I'm like, okay, this isn't going to go well. One of the hooligans walks up to one of the cops in full riot gear and punches him in the face. I'm like, okay, I'm going to be on state-run television. This is fun. Well, to disperse the crowd, the guy cranks both of them and starts dispersing the crowd. I'm wearing contacts at the time, so it hits me. Now, I'm not saying I got massively tear gassed I got hit, but it wasn't like what you get when you are a Green Beret or a Navy SEAL where you get it blasted on you. It hurt like hell, and it dissolved my contacts on the spot. Now, I've also said this. I don't speak any other languages. The fortunate thing about Italy is that you don't have to speak Italian. You can speak Portuguese, French, Spanish, and English and get everywhere. So my eyes are burning. I look at to the people going, I'm going back. I don't know what the hell happens. I need to get my glasses. So I go back. I get on there. I think nothing of this. I'm like, oh, whatever. We turn on the TV, and this is Berlusconi's, I think, first term as prime minister. So it's a state-run TV at that time. Who do I see falling down, clutching his eyes? Fat old me on national TV. This is the dumbest damn thing I've ever seen in my life. So about a week later, I get off the plane after not seeing my family for 3 weeks, and I'm insanely close to my family. I still am at this point. My mom is like, "Oh my God, how much?" Well, I've never seen you. I look at her going, I was on state-run television. I dissolved my contacts. So that, and I've told that story many times. It's one of those things I look at and go, I'm never going to get that happen again. And I've been to games over here in the States, and I've not seen anything come anywhere near.
Yeah, it's a very different experience over here. All right, so let's talk more about the Yellow Card podcast. So, can you describe it? I mean, I have been on it once before, and it's kind of like a radio program with like kind of a fixed hour, which is a little bit different than this podcast and some of the other podcasts. So, what drew you to kind of doing things that way versus maybe just more kind of like free, less constrained?
Well, what originally started is, and I have buried the lead on this a couple times, my goal in life was to be a producer on a daily sports show. That was my only goal in life. I grew up, my family didn't believe in watching television. We had cable. I remember the old UHF, VHF stuff. I remember all of that. But I wasn't able to watch TV until I was like 10. So I grew up with the radio on, and I came through in an era where there really wasn't sports on radio. So when I found out you could do that for a living, I'm like, that's what I'm doing. Fast forward out of camp, I went to school for this. Didn't get the degree in sports journalism, but I kind of know how to do it. When I was working, I had a kind of a dead-end job, and I was feeling kind of lost in it. So I just started calling up podcasts. and just started talking to people about it. And I called up a guy in Philadelphia, and I'd help him find guests because it was one of those things I'd just stick out my neck going, shit, I'll get you. And he wanted to do a podcast. So I was brought on originally as the co-host, and I just do whatever he wanted. And eventually
And when was this?
Oh, God, this is like, I started with him on radio in 2011.
Got it.
I got the pod in the middle of 2012. So that's a while. I mean, I've outlasted a lot of people. A lot of people at this point. Hell, I've outlasted a lot of co-hosts at this point. So Yellow Card comes around, and I describe it as, I see people who do this and they have long lists, long notes, and they section off each part of their pod. That doesn't interest me. I want to get into an interview and see where you're going. Because to me, you can't script out an interview. Okay, well, I want these 7 questions and no one wants to answer. Why? What if I'm talking to you, Dave? What if I'm talking to you about the San Jose earthquakes, and suddenly in the middle of it, the coach walks away to Mexico? That's not planned for. So I decided, well, what the heck? And I've been fortunate. I've had a number of co-hosts here that are kind of, well, let's just do it as we see. And it's come across some very fun ones. And I look at it this way. I don't plan the pods. I'll go with a general, like this Friday, I'm talking New York Red Bull. All right. I'll probably pull up something on Twitter and look and just go off my head. 90% of the pods you guys have listened to that I've done, I'm doing out of my head. To a point, I know when I did a whole thing with one of Brian Clough's old players, and I did that whole thing out of my head. And Clough's been dead since the 90s.
So it's more just, you already have such a huge knowledge base. Like you were talking about, you listen to 40 podcasts, you have 1,000 soccer books, you've gone to matches all over the world. So you can kind of just utilize that. So that's your perspective. I want to touch on a lot of different things that you mentioned in there. But first off, right now the podcast is on Blog Talk Radio, and I think people can listen live. Do you have any idea of how many people listen and tune in live versus listen to the podcast afterwards? I'd just be curious to know what that breakdown is kind of like. Because I know for us, we're on YouTube live, and then we obviously release this as a podcast as well. And our listens are probably maybe 15% or so from YouTube, and then the majority come from the podcast. So I wanted to know, how your breakdown is.
To put it mildly, the only platform I've ever been on is Blog Talk, because it's basically how I inherited the original pod. Now, the network, the stuff I'm doing now is completely, I broke off from the guy in Philadelphia about 6 years ago at this point. So this is all on me. I've never believed the numbers that Blog Talk has ever given me. To the point, they've screwed with them so many times. I have a pod that's in there from 2012 that I don't believe the numbers on. They say I got 2,000 of it, 2,000 listens. I don't buy that for a second. So I look at it this way. I look at it as how many people I know that are big in the media that actually know me, and how many people I know will listen to it. If I can touch one or two people during the week that want to listen to me, fine. Because none of this has ever been for me about Stephen. It came 2-3 years ago. Crap, I'm actually good at this stuff. So it's been more of, I know people download it onto iTunes or Stitcher because I have people at work that listen to me. But as far as concrete data, it's out there at this point.
And it's not important to you. And that's an interesting perspective. And I think it's a really valid perspective. And we actually, just a little peek behind the curtains on Bros Talking Soccer, we just switched hosting of our podcast from SoundCloud to Libsyn because I didn't have confidence in our numbers from SoundCloud. And so for me, I guess because I come from a background in finance and accounting, and so the numbers, I feel like, are the only thing I can kind of wrap my head around. And so I'm trying to distance myself from that, a bit with social media interactions and all of that. But that's a really cool kind of interesting perspective that you provided there. Now, with your co-host, I know you said you've gone through a bunch of different ones. What's been the issues or adaptations you've gone through as a result of just changing co-hosts, a handful of times?
Well, originally Chris Gluck was supposed to be the last one. You guys basically shouldn't know me. I was going to leave in 2016 because I figured I had done enough and said enough. And then Chris went back to coaching and has gotten off of radio and gone from there. A couple of them, to be honest with you, and this is why I don't do this with family or my family, and he knows about this, is I don't want to have anybody that I'm close to. My first couple co-hosts are big time now. Couple of them, one of them's at BN Sports, and one of them's on the West Coast and has been doing his pod for 20 years at this point. So, and one in the middle, I threw off the show. I point blank threw him off the show. I'm like, I'm paying for this. It's not your demo tape. Go start your own. Duffy.
And Duffy's your current co-host, correct?
Duffy is the current and the last because I'm not going through another one.
Okay.
Whenever he decides he's done, I'm done too. Now, I said a lot last year that I'm leaving this. I'm not. I'm here for the get-go. Duffy was a happy chance. I've known Duffy for years online. Duffy, I didn't know this until I got him on air. He went to school in the 80s for media. Now, obviously, when you graduate in 89 and you come onto media in 2018, a lot changes. A lot changed from 2003 to now for me. So, I mean, there's some stuff I look at going, what the hell? Duffy did, for the longest time, have any media experience. And I just thought, well, hell, let's see what we can do because Duffy's wired like me in that he knows a lot about the sport and he doesn't give himself credit on it. He could do his own pod easily off of what he knows and do it well. I can go literally a week before I'm going, all right, I'm going to go find someone on Sheffield Wednesday here in New York City and talk to him. And Duffy will take half the show. It's more been recently with me is that I'm not willing to make the show about me anymore. I'm known. People know who I am. I mean, I'm in phones of people that are very big in media right now, and that still surprises the hell out of me. And I mean, it still surprises me the two people that are responsible for me getting into this are close friends, but sure, we'll go with that. It's more about.
Can I ask who that is?
Oh, Del Grove and Phil Brown to be on the pitch.
Oh, okay.
I've known Phil Brown. I'm probably one of the first 1,000 listeners he's had because I've listened since 2010. I've known Daryl, as I told you, since 2005. So that's one of those things that I told them both, and I've told them both this on air and in emails. The pod is basically designed as the Total Soccer Show. It's point blank a ripoff of them. And I don't mean it as a ripoff as I'm stealing stuff from them, is that I like what they do. I've liked what they do since they were on a public broadcasting station back in Richmond. Mine is basically like what Phil Brown started the show out with before he everything collapsed on him. But I'm not here to make it about Stephen. I'm here to make it about the content. And it's different for you guys getting in than it was for me. When I got in, all it was let's talk about the EPL and let's talk about Spain. Now, you can find a pod on everything. I mean, how many earthquake shows do you know? I know of about 4 easily. I know about 4 union ones easily. That was not the case in 2012. So, I mean, I kind of set it up to be this way.
Yeah, and that's really interesting. Do you So I got a couple questions off of that. Now, with you said you almost walked away in 2016, and this will be the last, pod or co-host that you'll have. You'll walk away if Duffy ever walks away. What do you do after that? Will you start another show? Will you do something else within soccer, or will it just be you'll move on to college basketball or something else?
See, that's the thing why I didn't go, is I had no idea.
Got it.
It was my original plan was to get Yellow Card to a point where I could hand it off to someone and hand it off to the next generation and go, it's yours, and we could go from here. Because I was given the opportunity, I've been given so many opportunities in this to do what I am that I want to give it to the next person. Now, unfortunately, the first person I wanted to give it to chickened out on me. Now, the next person, and I'll say it point blank, and I've told him this, is Matt Markstone. He does the Southampton Delivery Pod.
We'll have him next week as a guest, actually.
Yeah, he's wonderful, and he's as great of a podcaster as he is of a person. Legitimately one of the nicest guys I'll ever meet. And I jokingly call him, he's got the best hairline on the pod. Duffy's got a full head of hair, so let's go figure on that one. I think the original plan was, if I can think about it, is that I was going to give Yellow Card to Matt Markstone and take a year off and go from there. I don't want to get back into the team side. I've already done that enough times. It's not a winning experience by any stretch of the imagination. I'm happy with doing a little bit media here and there. And I mean, I don't write as much as I used to, but I'm having fun doing this stuff.
And earlier so that's great. And then earlier you were talking about, when you kind of first got into the podcasting game, there wasn't nearly as much competition, from, having so many, so much variety from podcasts you can listen to and all of that. Can you kind of compare and contrast how it was back then and how it is now, and how it's, advantages and disadvantages of back then and current?
Oh, the easy, obvious advantage to what it was when I got in is that I could get in and screw up for a year and nobody would listen. Nowadays, and you're lucky, you've got young brothers. They don't know any different. I mean, you guys probably all grew up with the sport as big as it is today.
So I'm still old enough to remember it not quite this big, and even Christian is to an extent. Matt probably, especially in our household, because it was such a big deal, he probably doesn't remember too much of a time before then. But I mean, I can still kind of remember it.
Yeah, but I know I'm older than you by enough. But see, the thing with what it is today for you guys, and I'm jealous of it, to be honest with you, is the teams are easier to get a hold of. Whereas when I got into it, my first 3 or 4 guests were just people I found off of found off of Facebook. Nowadays, now keep in mind, when I got into this, SiriusXM-FC was not what it is today. When I started, the football show was a once a month show. It's now every day. Corner Attack wasn't around. Donnie was still playing. I think Miola was still playing at the time. And Beyond the Pitch, I think he hadn't gone to national streaming at the point. So you had niche markets where you could get into. Nowadays, like if I want to go find something on Argentina, I go to Hand Up Pod. Or like if I want to go listen to a Boca Juniors pod, I go find my friend Gabrielle in New Jersey. Or, hey, I want to go and find something on Brazil. Chase and Jimmy. I can find something on anything. And it's not even team related. You can find tactical pods. So the way to find stuff, heck, you can even find someone talking about scarves now. I mean, I think the media has gotten so much better because our generation has gotten into it and gone, all right, let's have some fun.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to do with this show. So yeah, I can completely agree on that front. Do you have a favorite show or guest that you've had? I know you've been doing this a long time, but is there any specific either show or moment that really sticks out in your mind as something like either awesome, you felt like, you made it, or just a show that you really loved?
Well, the point where I knew I made it was when Kartik Krishnaiyer openly said on air that he downloads me. Now, to the point that I don't know many people know who Kartik Krishnaiyer is anymore.
I know him from Twitter.
Yeah. See, here's the problem: is Kartik got out of the sport. Kartik got out of it before a lot of the new generation got into it. There is a generation before me that did this stuff, and he's one of them. And I remember getting into this, listening to Kartik, reading Kartik, and I just hooked up with him one day online, and we're good friends. I mean, most of the soccer books I told you about are sitting in Fort Lauderdale in his house. I used to, when I was a shipping manager, I'd just throw a box together and send them to him. And and I've told him this many times. He was supposed to be the last co-host because I've tried to get him to get out of retirement at least 3 times. I've tried to pull him back out. Now, he still occasionally will do U.S. national team stuff, and Chris Harris will do the World Soccer Talk pod with him now, but it's not the World Soccer Talk pod that I knew. So it's different. When someone like Kartik, who basically knows everyone, rates me and says I'm one of the icons, I'm like, all right. You do it. The other one that reminds me a lot is I had Thomas Ron get on my pod about a month after he got fired from the Tampa Bay Rowdies. And I have it on my phone, and I'll upload it to the Slack chat so you guys can see this. I did a podcast scarf years ago. God, this is 5-6 years ago at this point when I lost my job. I decided to do a pod scarf, and I did the pod scarf, and then I got a full-time job. So it's like, crap. I don't need this anymore. So I just started giving them out. So people like Brian Dunseth has one, Peter Wilt has one. I forgot, I snuck one in somewhere else. They're all gone at this point. I sent one to the Tampa Bay Rowdies and just signed it Thomas Ronkin. And he carried that damn thing around LA Stadium, taking pictures of it. And I wake up one morning to my Twitter exploding. And that doesn't really happen much with me at that time. Nowadays, now that I tell Don Garber to go screw himself, and I'm being polite on that one. Oh, I have a long time hated rivalry with that man. And it's surprising that Major League Soccer will return my texts at this point. He took pictures of it all around LA, and I'm like,
That's really cool.
what the hell? So
That's awesome. That's a nice bit of viral marketing for you. So that's really cool.
yeah,
Last yellow card question for you, yellow card pod question for you. Has that always been the show's name since it first started? Has there been any evolution of that? And if it's always been the name, where does that name come from? Obviously, we know yellow cards in soccer, but is there any sort of deeper meaning, or is it just putting together a soccer
that was
term?
a happy. So, to be honest, Dave, that was a happy accident. To be brutally honest with you, the original name was the Tuesday Vuvuzela Blast podcast.
That is a mouthful.
Yeah, trust me. I used to call it just Vuvu. Well, when I took it over with my original co-host, when we separated from everybody, when they were all going off, we wanted to come up with something. And my original plan was, when I still listened to terrestrial radio, was to name it with myself. Use my last name. Then I remembered, if you do that and trademark it and have a co-host, you're screwed. You're pretty much screwed, which has now gone into a whole degree of problems, because I've loosely tried to make Yellow Card a network, and it is right now because Matt Markstone uploads his pod for Tuesday nights. That was my original time slot years ago. So the fact I gave up Tuesday still makes me feel uneven, but Matt knows it's a joke. I have since taken the Wednesday show as the subs bench, which is a play on words because about 4 years ago, I tried to launch this as a network, and I had a bunch of people on. One retired. The other guy is the actual guy that runs the Minnesota United game day Twitter account. Great guy. He actually did the when you look at the Twitter account for Yellow Card Pod, he did the card for it. And one of the guys who did
I think you're covering the mic again, Stephen, just a little bit. You're good.
There we go. Sorry about that.
There we go. No worries.
I'm so not used to that. So you didn't really miss much anyway. So
no, it was just the last like literally 10 seconds. So
that's the most 10 seconds you won't have to listen to. So that's fine by me. So,
but you were talking about the guy I think you said in Minnesota who designed the logo.
Yeah, design my logo for the pod, and it's been there for years, and I keep thinking of redoing it, but it's at this point, it's the scarf, so I'm gonna keep it as that. He runs the Minnesota United Twitter account, GameGate Twitter account. So that's what the original pod was. So I just when Duffy and I. When I took back over Yellow Card last year, I named the Wednesday show the subs bench just because I could. So
your show's the subs bench. The Tuesday show is Matt's show, and then so the Yellow Card, was that the name going back to? So how did it go from the Vuvuzela to Yellow Card? I guess that's where you lost me.
Yellow Card was the name when I took over completely with my old co-host. That's because when I got it from Philly, he said, just make it whatever you want. So we came up with like 4 or 5, and I don't remember half of them. They're in an old email somewhere. I came up with Yellow Card just for the hell of it.
Okay.
There's no deep meaning to it at anything other than it's just Yellow Card Podcast. And technically the name of it is Yellow Carded. But the problem is, through the first maybe 4 years of the pod, I drank heavily on air. Dropped the ED really quickly. You know what it's like, Dave.
Oh, yeah, I'm constantly stumbling over my words.
Yeah, and you have to, when you're redirecting the conversation, you want to reject the conversation as, all right, you're listening to Yellow Card. Oh, imagine when you've had 2 or 3 beers and you're trying to say Yellow Carded.
I know. I'm sober for almost all of these recordings, and I'm constantly stumbling over my words. So yeah, I can only imagine. So okay, so that makes sense. Now I know you're also a Liverpool fan like myself. So how did that fandom come about?
Happy accident, and you know this as well as me. In America, we don't get to grow up with the sport. We have to pick the sport, and there's really no feeling behind it. I'm an old head. My undergrad degree is in military history, and I read history books all the time. So when I got into it, I didn't want to follow a team that had a sketchy history at best. Now, that's not saying Liverpool doesn't have its points of history that you just want to not look at. But for the most part, it's basically the New York Yankees of the sport, if you think about it.
I mean, well, I guess really you can make a case for a lot of different teams being the Yankees just because of the sport's long history. I mean, United could be made that case. It depends on when your fandom came about. So if your fandom came about in like the 80s and 90s, then yeah, they would be considered kind of the Yankees. So when did your fandom kind of start?
I'm gonna say Rafa Benitez's last year.
Okay, so late, kind of late 2010s. So
Short, yeah,
or 2000s. I mean,
that's about that. There's some pictures online of me in a Chelsea uniform, but that's because when I was still a sports information director, the only way I could watch the sport was through Chelsea TV because my soccer coach that I was working with would just upload the videos. Well, it was to tape at that time, so I had a Chelsea jersey. I'm on my fourth Liverpool jersey at this point. And it's funny, I have a jersey sponsor with the pod, and I have not gotten any of the jerseys that I have a scarf to. So
got it. Interesting. So, what drew you to Rafa and the Reds? Was it, and was it just their history? I mean, at that time they were playing some great soccer, and they almost won the league. And I believe it was 08, 09. I'm sure Christian would know, but was it just they had a talented team, and you like their style of play plus their history?
no, it was just on. I
Okay,
would
all
love
right.
to. I would love to say any. I would love to say any of this with soccer with yellow card. Is it? There's any deep meaning? There really isn't. There
Just kind
really
of
isn't. I
stumbled
just
into things, and it's clearly working out. I mean, yeah.
yeah.
So
Thank God my first match watching on TV wasn't Blackburn because then I'd be screwed.
agreed with that. So, how are you feeling about the Reds this season? Do you think they're going to be able to hang on for the Premier League title? What are your thoughts?
I hope so. I seriously hope so. It would be fun because I like Jurgen Klopp. I read the book that Raphael Hockenstein wrote about him, which was really good. And I've always liked Klopp because he's huge. You see him standing next to tall players. I'm like, good Lord, what are you, Peter Crouch? So, and he seems a lot of fun. I'm one of those people that likes to see older teams come back. Like I'm waiting for the day that Nottingham Forest comes back up because that'll be fun. And I hope Leeds comes back up this year because the EPL needs Billy in the lead. We need we need El Loco in EPL because that will just be fun.
Yeah,
I hope Liverpool does, but I think this is a long-term thing. I don't think this is a 1 year and then fall apart.
I certainly
I
hope
think
not.
I think this is one of those that it could get back together. And I mean, at a certain point, you're not going to see the 60s, 70s, and 80s back from Liverpool. That type of success doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to be a fluke either. I still think Man City has a deeper team. I just hope that, Liverpool not being distracted by other competitions, they can focus on the Premier League and just, see it out. I don't have a ton of confidence, but I'm hopeful about all of it. And hopefully this summer they can sort of retool and build up some of that depth that I think they sorely need.
I don't think they need to do too much because here's the problem that the EPL misses completely. A lot of the big clubs miss is that academies can bring you big talent, and Liverpool has generally brought through two or three really good players. I mean, you look at some of those teams that Shankly and Paisley had. There were players coming up from the academy there. I mean, I'm also a Celtic fan. I know of the old quality streaking, the Lisbon Lions that were basically grown from the team. So I think, in a theory, now it's not going to be the same as it was back then. And if you can bring through one or two players, you're good. And I think they need to strengthen the back line one more time. Put one more player behind each. And I'm not saying go get another Virgil van Dijk behind them. Get one step down. What Klopp should actually do, and he will never do this, is go try to find himself over in Germany. Because Klopp's a former Bundesliga center back. Go find yourself. Because I'm
Well, I
sure
think
he
Yeah, I think I mean, he kind of did that with Matip, and so I wouldn't rule him out as trying to do that. I mean, Matip came on a free transfer from the Bundesliga, and he's kind of that level that you're talking about. So, you know, hopefully I agree with you. Hopefully he does that
Yeah.
as well. So you touched on you're a Celtic fan, which I know I saw on Twitter you were going at some people for Rodgers to Leicester City. So I got to ask, what do you think about that move, and who do you think is going to come in at Celtic? How do you feel about it?
I, I've gotten to the point in media wise and with my name wise that I just basically screw with people online just because it's fun.
So you're
I just
trolling.
oh god yeah, I just screw with people online just and sometimes I forget because there is soccer Steven and then there is actual Steven and I forget that online doesn't know real Steven, so it's like, uh-oh. I gotta step back real quick. Well, Neil Lennon has come in until the end of the year. So that I mean, he was already in the area anyway. He had already just gotten fired or whatever happened at Hibbs. I don't know, don't care. He's gonna take it until the end of the year. I mean, Celtic's not one of those where you're going to get some big name in. You're not going to get Marcelo Bielsa to come up to Scotland. Let's be honest with that. Jose Mourinho is not going to come out of Russia and come there. It's going to be someone like you probably will see either Neil Lennon get a contract extension or you'll see Steve Clark come in. And that's about it. And that's fine because in reality, in Scotland, you don't really need to try too hard to win because that blue team, they're going to go bust again.
Anyone not following, he's talking about Rangers, and he's a
Yeah,
Celtic fan.
yeah. I won't. I'm a different Celtic fan. There's the Celtic fans online that want to live every moment by talking every moment of that other team and want to spend every moment talking about them. And then there's me. If I don't like you, I'm not going to talk about you. Now, I've talked about them on the pod once, and I've had a former trialist on the pod from that team. But I won't use the name on air.
Is it killing you that Gerard's there, or no? Does it not matter?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that pisses me off so much because here's the strange thing about it: he's not the first former Liverpool midfielder to go in there. Graham Souness was there in the '90s, and here's the sad thing: Graham Souness, if the fans knew him as a player, would say this is very eerie. This is very freaking eerie. It's the same thing. So this is odd because I don't want to recognize him. I am not surprised Steven Gerrard went up there. Really, I'm not. Because he was not going to get the time of day in England. He would have to have gone below. He probably would have had to go to League One to get something. Because now I didn't see Frank Lampard going to Derby and doing decently. And I'm glad for him. I know people who dealt with him when he was in New York City and know that he's actually a decent enough guy. Cool. Cool. And to be honest with you, I hope he does well. I don't really hate Frank Lampard that much. I mean, there's very few players I could safely say, "Go, I hate you." I don't hate him, and I hope, I hope Frank Lampard does very well as long as he always loses to Nottingham Forest, and that's fine by me.
All right, fair enough. I was actually at a Forest game in 2018. I saw them beat Sheffield Wednesday 1-0 or
Oh,
2-1. I actually can't remember. So yeah, but that was an interesting sort of match, an interesting experience right on the river there in Nottingham. So yeah, I wish good things for them. I know they've fallen off a little bit since then. So hopefully they can get things turned around. Now, Steven, is there anything I didn't ask or anything you wanted to talk about before I ask my final question here tonight?
no, it's an odd thing to be honest, Dave, to be on the other side of it. I haven't done many pods or many interviews outside of Yellow Card or giving them controls up. And I'm not much of a control freak to begin with. So it's awfully odd when you reached out to me going, oh, this is going to be fun, because a lot of the ones that I do are really controlled environments where people will like touch around stuff, or like Kardik will kick up a pod and have me on. So it's kind of one of those things. I'm like, this either is going to be insanely fun, or it's going to be like when I did the Orlando City one and get that one completely thrown off air.
Well, we appreciate you joining. I've had a good time, and you've had really interesting sort of stories and background, and you've got, you know, just a ton of awesome experience. So I've enjoyed it, and I assume our listeners will as well. But yeah, we appreciate you coming on, giving up a little control over to me and all of that. So before, so my last question that I ask all my guests. So what's the thing you're most excited about happening in your soccer world? You can take it any direction you want, but what's the thing you're most excited about happening?
Well, with me, it's evolving into something I never thought I would be. I'm a writer. I am not a podcaster by any stretch of the imagination. Doing this for 7 years has been a complete surprise to me. I get to the start of New Year going, oh hell, oh well, I'll do it again. I'm a writer. I've written over, God, I'm over in the 200s of articles online, and I'm doing magazines now. The fact I'm basically through one manuscript and planning out another is a complete surprise to me, and it's made me feel very, very good. It's just, all right, I can do this. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Well, that's awesome. You know, it's always great to hear. And again, your story is just so interesting that you didn't really plan anything. You've just been open to things. And as they've come along, you've sort of, you know, I don't want to say stumbled into things, but I mean, that's kind of the right word to use. And it's all sort of worked out. So that's really awesome to hear. So that makes me happy. And I wish the best for you. I thank you for having us on the Yellow Card Pod. It was a lot of fun. And yeah, can you tell people, so we have it linked in the podcast description and or podcast show notes and video description, you know, where you can find Stephen online, his podcast and all of that. But Stephen, can you remind people just where to find you?
Oh. You can find me walking down the street in Buffalo. Oh, you're not looking for that. Just type in Stephen C. Brandt on
there you go.
On Twitter. You'll find me. I'm basically stalking pretty much 90% of people in media. Basically, if you look in and you see Brian Dunseth talking or Sirius FM talking, just look for me. I'm around. I'm usually one of the easiest people to get a hold of, because most of this with me, to be honest with you, Dave, is waiting for the curtain to be pulled back and go, ha! You're actually an NFL fan.
So there you have it. Make sure to give him a follow, interact with him, and all of that. Stephen, thank you so much for being here and talking with me today.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, people that have joined on YouTube, hello. Or not hello, thank you. That's what I meant to say. And yeah, so thanks for being here. We're actually starting a CONCACAF Champions League talk right now. So if you want to stay on the channel, switch over to that. And Stephen, thanks for being here. And yeah, I'm sure I'll talk to you soon, and I'll tag you in everything and whatnot.
Yeah, no problem, man.
All right, have a good one.